Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Food, Freedom, and Fertility. Here we are, Caitlin Johnson, Sophia Pavia, both registered dietitians in the women's health space, experts in functional medicine, herbs, fertility, progesterone, PCOS, pregnancy, and even postpartum topics. We just love this space, and we're here today to celebrate the Food, Freedom, Fertility podcast's 3rd anniversary.
3 years we've been doing this. We've been recording episodes for longer than that, but it's been 3 years that we've been on the airwaves and live communicating with you ladies. And we've gone through so many changes in that time. We're now on YouTube and we have video. We now have sponsors in our episodes. We now have a resident expert, Dr. Gary, who we consult on a regular basis. We've got a lot of things. We have really grown and changed over the past 3 years. And for those of you OG listeners who've been listening to us from the very beginning, I'm very impressed that you've hung on this long. We had a kind of a rocky start. And for those of you who are just joining us, if you're feeling brave and forgiving, go back and listen to those earliest episodes when Caitlin and I were first getting our feet under us. Talking on camera and talking while being recorded and talking to people that we greatly admire without turning into total fangirls. And here we are now, 3 years in. So we're just sort of doing like a recap episode, favorite moments, what we've learned, sort of the progression of where each of us are in our businesses now. And we just wanted to bring you along. So it's going to be a little bit of a short and sweet episode where we touch on some of our favorite things and then launch into our interim season. So Caitlin, will you explain what the interim season is going to be?
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about it as like an interlude in a song where it's like not the main part, it's not the chorus, it's this interlude. We recently started recording this segment called Win Wednesdays. I have some thoughts about renaming it, Sophia. Maybe we'll talk off air about that. But I had this like maybe we'll talk on air about it. But
yeah,
the point of these episodes are to celebrate wins. Sophia and I have been working in this space for almost 10 years now as dietitians and have had a lot of success stories with clients that are trying to get pregnant, who have gotten pregnant, who have had babies, who have gone on to have multiple children with us. We've both launched courses where we've kind of expanded our reach and working with people, and then this free podcast that you're listening to. And within this kind of vast community that people may have worked with us one-on-one or in group coaching or in our courses or just a listener to the podcast and a follower on Instagram, we have beautiful stories of sad fertility stories, painful, hopeless stories turning to just such success. And we're even celebrating milestones along the way. So this new segment is called right now, Win Wednesday. And we kind of introduced it in the middle of last season to see how people responded.
Yeah, sort of a teaser.
Stories. Yeah, because, fertility is a hard thing, right? Like walking an infertility story and seeing people get pregnant and seeing your best friend who basically like sneezes next to a guy and gets pregnant. And then it's you and you're having a hard time. Sometimes these stories don't feel so inspiring. But what we found and a lot of the feedback we got was that it was inspiring because it isn't your best friend or your cousin. It's maybe someone who has the same resources available to them as you do or the same diagnosis. And you're getting to kind of hear more behind the scenes how the story played out. And so getting that feedback and also just recording these episodes, Sophia and I having so much fun. Instead of taking a season break, we're kind of using this as an interlude where we're going to still be giving you content. Within these episodes, there's still great suggestions, great kind of expert interjections from Sophia and I to explain why maybe a decision was made or why they didn't go that route or what other options might have been available. So they're not just like a success story. You get to hear some of those expert pieces along the way, but they are inspiring and helpful. So this is going to kind of be the interlude. We do have 3 sponsors for the season. So there will be 3 episodes throughout the kind of interlude summer 2024 season where you're going to hear from companies that support our mission with products and services that are available to you. And other than that, they're just going to be really inspiring stories. And we're pumped to not just leave you hanging for 3 months or 6 months in between
That was
seasons.
one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got from you guys.
Content.
Is that you missed us during the break and you were wondering where we were and you had sort of integrated us into your weekly routine. And so we don't want to just fall off the map. Meanwhile, we do need to actually take season breaks for our businesses, for our families, to continue to grow professionally. And so we thought this would be a nice way to stay with you over the next few weeks while still delivering very valuable content. And I think you're gonna just love these episodes because they're ladies who are just like you. They are you. They are you. And they're trying all the things. And they're telling you what things worked. And they're telling you for how long they did it and at which dose and for what duration and all these things. You get to kind of look at their roadmap, how they got to where they are and in practice, because, it's really wonderful to read data and to see 50% of people experience this, 75% of people experience that. This kind of treatment works 18% of the time, blah, 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 blah. But when you don't fit into that, when you're the more rare case that doesn't fit into the majority, you feel really hung out to dry. And so these ladies are real, not rare. They are just like you, and you can glean a lot from them and learn from their experience. And if nothing else, feel a little less alone and have a little bit more community behind you while you are figuring out what your next move needs to be, or while you're waiting for the last move you made to show whether it's doing something or not.
Absolutely. So that's kind of the roadmap of what's going to be coming next week. We're going to start this 12-episode summer season, the interlude, and we hope you really enjoy it. We've just wrapped up a really fun season where we had great experts. We gave some good health journey updates. And maybe we should go there first, Sophia, because since we recorded your health update, you have since had your endometriosis, excision surgery, fibroid,
ablation, radiofrequency ablation.
Ablation, thank you.
Yeah.
And you've had your follow-up appointment with the doctor. I don't want to give too much away if we're going to do an episode with her, but would you like to kind of give a summary of how it's been and how you're doing?
Absolutely. I would love to update you all here on my recovery. And yeah, Caitlin, thank you for the intro. We actually scored. My surgeon is going to be coming up on our show. So next season, we're going to have an episode where my surgeon, Dr. Spring Robinson, the one who found the endometriosis, the one who diagnosed it, and the one who treated it, is going to be coming on here and talking about endometriosis treatment options, talking about diagnostic tools, talking about a symptom set that you may be experiencing without realizing it's endometriosis, because there are very classical symptoms and there's also very non-classical symptoms. And she is going to be just sort of taking us behind the curtain of this very mysterious disease that impacts at least 1 in 10 women, I myself being one of them. So to tell you about my experience up until this point. So I had my surgery, it'll be 3 weeks ago tomorrow. And I ended up having stage 3 deep penetrating endometriosis. And endometriosis is graded on 4 stages. So there's like stage 1 is like there's some there, but it's not really it's not on a place that's really like impacting the function of organs. It doesn't seem to be restricting the movement, but it is there. Stage 2 is more like, all right, we're starting to see some problems arise from this. There's maybe more of it than in stage 1. It's in some more difficult places and causing more issues. Stage 3 is like, okay, we're now like moderate to serious at this point, moderate to severe. And we're seeing really limited function. We're seeing organs that are very impacted. We're seeing a lot of restriction. And then stage 4 is like we're seeing organs like not functioning. We're seeing endometriosis going through organs instead of just being on them. And the surgeon will explain a lot more about this. I just want to give you a, loose definition so you know what I mean when I say I have stage 3. But I had my follow-up last week, and that was what the diagnosis was. And it's so weird. So my experience getting diagnosed with this, I kind of talked about this already in an episode. So you go back and listen to that if you want to know. But you get this diagnosis, hey, you have endometriosis. There's really no way to know how extensive, how pervasive, how prolific it is until the doctor is actually inside your body, either with her hands or with a camera, physically looking at your organs. Because the tissue is just so tiny sometimes, and it's just, you can't look at it and see like a big difference between healthy tissue and endometriosis on most modern imaging methods. Just not really there. And she'll talk more about how there are some imaging and some testing that can be a little more accurate about detecting it. But for me, I went into this surgery totally unknowing of what it was going to be. Were they going to go in there and even find endometriosis? Or is it going to be very small? Was it going to be a lot? Was it going to be like so much? There was even a chance that I would have to go back for a second surgery, because if it is that infiltrating deep endometriosis on certain organs, like let's say it's going through your diaphragm and into your lungs, the surgeon that I work with, she says, I'm going to send you to an actual pulmonary surgeon for that, because I don't want to be like cutting into someone's lung when I can hire somebody who that's all they do and they are great at lungs. I don't want to be doing like spine stuff. I will hire the spine doctor to come in, or the bladder doctor, or wherever this endometriosis is. If it's like penetrating an organ, then she said she would remove what she could, close up, and then we'd schedule to come back with another doctor who specializes in operating on those specific organs. So I didn't know if I was going to go in there and they were going to poke around with the camera and be like, what a hypochondriac, there's nothing in here. Or if I was going to come out and they were going to be like, oh my God, we got to get a heart surgeon because you have endometriosis in your pleural area or on your heart. So we just didn't know. And we didn't know if it was going to be 45 minutes or 6 hours. And there was just no way to know. So there's just going into it with so many unknowns. And you just kind of have to trust that like God is working this out for me. These doctors are good and going to help. And that was really the experience that I had. It was one of I've had 3-4 surgeries in my life at this point, and this one was the easiest as far as like the help that I got from the staff. They were the most helpful. It was by far the most difficult in the way that, because it was stage 3 endometriosis, I ended up being under anesthesia in the operating room for like 3.5 hours, which is actually a very long surgery. So it was quite a day. It was quite a day.
And how has recovery been since then? What has that looked like for you?
For me, the hardest part really was the fact that I wasn't supposed to be picking up my kids or holding them. and my belly was really sore and really swollen. And so I couldn't really even like have them in the bed with me because they'd like want to jump on the bed or flop over on me or dig one of their knees into me because they're trying to reach for something. And so I just needed like constant supervision while being with my kids. I couldn't be alone with them because I couldn't take care of them. And that was really the most challenging part. And that's the part that lasted the longest. The most painful part, believe it or not, was the gas pains. So when you have an abdominal surgery, we look at these like, if you were to like Google like picture of abdominal organs or like picture of your intestines or something, the way that these drawings of the human body looks, it makes it look like there's like all this space inside of you, right? Your liver's here, your stomach's there, your intestines are here, your uterus is down there, and it just looks like everything is sort of like floating around on its own, like almost like you're a swimming pool, and then there's like some organs floating in it like pool floaties. And in reality, it's much more like a vacuum-packed bag of sausages or lunch meat, where it's like everything is sealed in tight against each other. And that's really what's happening inside of it. And so in order for the doctors to be able to get like a 360 view of a piece of your colon or 360 view of your bladder, they have to make space and make it be more like the swimming pool with floaties in it than the bag of vacuum sealed sausages. And so they will pump your belly full, like inflate it with surgical gases, which I think are like carbon dioxide and nitrogen or something. And so that there's space to move their instruments inside of you and be able to pick up an organ, look at it from every side, put it back, cut away whatever needs to get cut away. And so once the surgery is done, they do their best to deflate your belly and get like all of that gas out, but they just can't get all of it. And so just like a bubble in like a level, have you ever used one of those like levels on your, like you're building some furniture from IKEA or hanging a picture or something? Once the level goes upright, the bubble is always towards the top. The bubble is always towards the highest point in the level. And that's what happens in your body. So when you're laying down in the surgery, the gases are like more towards your belly button. But then once you sit up, they kind of come up underneath your ribs and are like in your diaphragm. And so it basically feels like you've got a side cramp 24/7. And that pressure puts pressure on your diaphragmatic nerve, which comes up to the top of your lungs. So you get this pressure and pain, almost like somebody's giving you like a dead leg, like up on your neck and shoulder. And so that was the most painful part for me. And thankfully that only lasted about 3 days and was greatly helped. The more you get up and walk, the faster that pain goes away. And it's so weird because you're like, I wish I could like burp or fart or something, but the gas isn't in your stomach. Like when you burp, that's because there's gas in your stomach, and you burp, it's like the gas coming out of your esophagus and up to your mouth. When you fart, it's because there's gas in your large intestine and it comes out your butt. But when it's just in your body, like in the space between organs, you don't have a system in place like burping or farting to alleviate it. So what has to happen is as your blood and fluids move, they just slowly dissolve the gases and you breathe them out as carbon dioxide. And
that's crazy.
Yeah. So the more you walk and move, the more your blood like flows around those gases and absorbs them. And so I had to get up and walk. I made myself walk a mile about every hour for all my waking hours. So I was walking like 6-7 miles a day. So it's like, I wouldn't be like, okay, it's 1 o'clock, walk a mile, 2 o'clock, walk a mile. It'd be like from when I finished the last mile, then I would wait an hour and then I would walk another one. So 6 or 7 miles a day, just walking around my neighborhood, walking around my driveway to, get my stamina back up too, to get moving. And my recovery has been really great. I was very, very
That's so great.
motivated to recover because I have these small children who don't understand that mommy can't hold them, and because I really want to hold
Mhm.
them, and because I have a husband who is a great dad, but he's not a great mom. And so when he has to be mom and dad, he struggles. And so,
He struggles. Yeah.
yeah, it was time for me to get off my duff and get moving. And so,
That's really common, I think, with dads. Like,
yeah.
I feel like we live it weekly when BJ has
Hmm.
Fridays off and it's my day to work and he has the kids all day long. It's like, the end of the day, he's kind of like frazzled a little bit,
Hmm.
Men are good at what men are good at, and women are good at what women are good at, and that's good.
It's so true, and
Like,
it's also just like the role that you're used to. You know what I mean? Because like you became a parent at the same time
mhm,
he did. It's not like you have some sort of like experience that he doesn't. Like you both
mhm,
have been parents for the same amount of time. It's just that different responsibilities have been shouldered to each of you. And it's like if I can paint a wall, but like, am I as like a house painter and going to be able to do things like efficiently and quickly and properly? All the things. Knowing where to get the good paint, knowing which brush is for which job, knowing how long to leave the tape on, how to tape
mhm,
different things. Like all just the little stuff that moms are doing day in and day out, and we're just so practiced at. And dad is doing other things, and then he has to be the professional painter, right? And he's just not going to be on my level.
mhm,
And
yeah,
I don't know, and that's
and that's
marriage too,
okay.
also, you know? You just everybody has different things that
Yeah.
they think is important. There's things that I'm like, yeah, we could be late to that, I don't care. And there's things that he's like, yeah, we could be late to that, I don't care. And meanwhile, there's things where I'm like, we have to be on time. And it's kind of rare that they are aligned, you know? And same thing with like parenting.
Mhm.
There's certain messes that I'm like, eh, if they get crumbs there, I don't care. But if it is a wet spill, we cannot, you know, and I'm much more like uptight about
Mhm.
certain things and loosey goosey about others. And then he's got his things he's like that about. And the kids are used to being loosey
It's
goosey
even like
about.
that in friendship.
It is.
Like we were
I
we
feel like
were
I'm kind
in
of
a
defending him right now, I
taxi or
guess.
an Uber. We were in an Uber driving to the airport and Soph looks over and she's like, "You got an eyelash from the top that's stuck to the bottom. Do you want me to fix that for you?" And I was like, "No, it's not bothering
Meanwhile,
me."
I cannot stand that. Like if I put on mascara, ladies, back me up on this, okay?
She
If
couldn't
two of
even
your
stand it
eyelashes
on
are
me, but
sticking
that was
together,
partly why.
no, I didn't care that it was on you. I was like, that must be driving her insane. Because it took me a while to figure out that's what was going on with myself. I'd be like, my eye is messed up. What is happening here? Like, it's sticking, it's twitching, something is wrong. And then I finally look and see that it's like my lower lash and my upper lash have gotten like twisted, and I have to fix it.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh,
God gave
Caitlin,
me like the longest, thickest lashes, and it just happens
I know
sometimes.
they
It
are
doesn't bother me.
beautiful. But then I'm like, oh, Caitlin, this must be driving you crazy. Let me fix this for you. And she's like,
But
oh, I don't really care. It's
but
like someone has like a wrinkle in their
but that
sock, and they're like, oh, I don't care. And I'm like, what? If
man.
their sock is like bunched up in your shoe, you don't care about that? It's a textural problem.
So Sophia had surgery. It went well. She's 3-ish weeks out. They've survived. In the midst of that, too, 4th of July anniversary episode, we're also celebrating Louis, the man of mystery, and he had his last day of the Navy 5 days ago.
His last day of the Navy was 5 days
So
ago.
pretty
No,
wild.
yeah, it was.
Big change in Sophia's household.
A big change in my household. My husband has been not only the primary breadwinner, but as an active duty service member, his commitment to our nation trumps all. So if he has to go
Mhm.
here or there for this amount of time or whatever, then that's what has to happen. And so I've been the one who's had to have flexibility, change plans, figure something out at the last minute. Um, and it has worked well. And, sometimes it's a bummer, but now that's not
It
our
is what
life
it is.
anymore, which
Pretty
is
wild.
so crazy. It really has not sunk in.
And your feet haven't really hit the ground. They spent the weekend celebrating this with friends and family coming into town, which are like maybe the last of the bit are on their way to the airport right now as we're speaking,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
there's you haven't really had a normal day since. Meanwhile, you're also recovering from surgery. There's just a lot of life
And that
happening
is
for Miss
something I have
Sophia
to
Pavia
keep,
right now.
yeah, that is something I have to keep remembering. And that's something that I want listeners to understand too, that like the recovery from this is long. And even though, especially because it was a robotic surgery, right? Like I'll show you guys my scrapes here. I'll move this microphone. You can see like I have this bruise and then I have an incision here, one in my belly button, one up here, and then one right here. And this doesn't look like much, right? Please, like paper cut.
Mm-hmm.
Not much of anything happening here. They were like a little bit crispy crusty for a couple of days. They were a little bit they were definitely sore and tender. But because it was a robotic surgery, all the surgery happened on the inside. So I don't have this like, it's not like a C-section where you have this like big incision that's like stitched shut. It was just these little, what is that, like a centimeter each, like half inch maybe at the biggest.
Mm-hmm.
These little incisions that are just glued shut. I don't even think she probably did internal stitches, but, and that's all that you can see, but on the inside the healing is happening, and she had to keep reminding me of that because little things, like I went to a follow-up doctor's appointment with my husband like a week ago and like walked up 3 flights of stairs and was like oh my gosh, I'm like so gassed. It reminded me when we were in Colorado, felt like I'd gone up 10 flights and it was 3, but it's because like my body's working hard on healing and I have to remember
It
that,
is.
and that like fatigue and needing rest and not trying to just get back to everything right away, because I've been itching to get back to everything right away. And I know I didn't give you like a million details about my surgery. We're having a whole episode with my surgeon, Dr. Spring Robinson, where she is going to be able to explain what was going on, not just my personal experience, but actually what the surgery is and why why I feel this or that or the other thing. So we'll dig into that very deep early on in next season.
Okay, so I'm going to take a minute and we're going to do Connection Corner. I'm going to read a review. If you want to be a part of Connection Corner, all you have to do is go on and review our podcast. And one of the best places to do that is Apple. I think some of the other apps allow you to leave an actual review. Most of them just let you star kind of the episode. We appreciate that too. Rating, reviewing, and sharing our episodes really helps us continue to do this for you. So this one is from April 9th, LPT 1881, and the subject is Biggest Fan. My most listened to podcast of 2023-2024. Not only did this podcast help me when trying to conceive, but it started my journey into exploring functional nutrition. As a fellow registered dietitian, I appreciate the wealth of information they're sharing with the world. This is so, so needed. Listening to Sophia and Caitlin's entertaining and informative. I feel like I'm having a chat with my girlfriends. Love this show so much.
Oh, that is
LPT,
music
we
to
love
my ears.
you.
That is exactly what we want you to feel. We want you to feel like you are among peers that maybe just have had some different experiences than you. That you are just with friends learning.
I love that. Okay, so the other thing we wanted to do today was kind of harken back to an old episode. Each of us have kind of picked a favorite moment from the podcast, which we're going to share with you now. And then we're going to have Kaylee, who kind of does the behind the scenes, grab these clips and share with you a favorite moment.
Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, "I want to have a baby." And the doctor looks at you and says, "Good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant." And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today. All right, my favorite episode by a landslide has got to be, okay, and Caitlin and I don't know what each other's favorite episode is until right now, and we don't know, we may have the same one. So I'm going first. She might have the same one as me. For me, it was the follow-up with listener Caitlin. That was my favorite episode. And my favorite clip was when she announced that she was pregnant in the wild. And I'm not going to tell you too much about it because I want you to be able to relive that crisp moment right now. And so we're going to play that back for you right now.
Should we give him like the end before the beginning?
Let's do it. Reveal it. Reveal it.
I am pregnant.
Woo! We are so happy. Okay, let's see the belly.
Yeah, show
us the bump.
Most beautiful belly.
Oh, girl, it's beautiful. Boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
All the good parts.
Yeah. So she removed all of that, and 2 cycles later, I was pregnant.
Stop. Oh my God.
I can't tell you
pregnant
how many.
in the wild. So
Pregnant
you weren't
in the wild.
using medication. You didn't do IVF.
So
You didn't do any kind of crazy Franken-science. You just got pregnant in the wild.
we got pregnant in the wild. The only thing that I was taking, which was one of the recommendations that the three of us, both of you had talked about the last time, was if you can find a doctor that can prescribe progesterone.
Ding, ding, ding.
So the doctor who did my surgery said, "I'll prescribe you progesterone. You've already been
Hell
through
yeah.
enough." Yeah. So I already had it on hand. So as soon as I got that that positive pregnancy test, actually, I think I started taking it like 3-DPO because at that point, that's where I was
right when
at.
you want to start.
Right.
I think
That's 3 days post-ovulation for those of you who are new to fertility acronyms. DPO is days post-ovulation.
Yeah. So that was the only thing I was taking was the prescription progesterone, and I took that for 12 weeks.
Holy macaroni! That is so amazing.
And how far along are you now?
I'm almost 26 weeks now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. Okay, we're going to leave you on this high for a second, go hear from our first sponsors, and we'll be back with more of this amazing story. I'll take that high all day long. All day long.
And that
I
was...
love Caitlin.
I love her too. And listeners, I actually did go on to attend her baby shower. I got to meet her IRL in real life. And I got to play the cheesy little baby games. And I gave her a mountain of used baby stuff. My trunk packed.
because she had a little girl and I wanted to give her a bunch of little girl stuff. So she got bags of baby clothes from ages newborn to like 1 year. She got like breastfeeding pillow, breastfeeding cover, like all the breastfeeding stuff. Our sponsor gave me like a bunch of stuff to give her. So she got like a whole package of like prenatal, postpartum hydration support, like all the stuff. And it was just an absolute joy to shower her in those gifts and to go meet the people who had been praying alongside her and see that baby bump. And it was just awesome. And so my favorite moment from this past season was her saying how she got pregnant in the wild using only progesterone suppositories as medication, which I was
like
one of the
2 cycles or 1 cycle after
Yeah.
her
after her
endometriosis
excision surgery. Was just
which is another thing we brought up on that episode.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think back to like, first of all, Caitlin is just a bright light. She is a social worker. She is kind. She loves God. Like, we scheduled our first recording with her when she won that giveaway to come on the podcast and be treated like a patient. And she missed it because she was at church. It's like, she just was so sweet. We just fell in love with her right off the bat. And she shares this in the follow-up episode, but she had gotten pregnant and then lost the pregnancy pretty quickly. And I got to like help her order some labs and be a little bit behind the scenes in that. We didn't talk about it too much in the episode, but I just really feel like God was like, pick this girl because you said to her, I'm really concerned about what you're saying, like the doctors can't get through your cervix, and that just doesn't sound right. And alas, she has endometriosis, and
it was like
of
twisting
course,
her uterus
held
up and sideways.
Yes. So we also brought up progesterone to her, and I'm not trying to be like, woo, Caitlin and Sophia, but sometimes
we have a crystal ball into everyone's bodily functions, because we don't.
We don't, but we do know some things, and we've seen a lot of things, and stepping back and not just being like straight down the reproductive cycle of what you're being offered. There were things to find out for her where she very easily could have just been told unexplained infertility, IVF, and frankly
would have had
kind of
horrible experience. I don't think it would have ended up with a baby the way that she would have hoped.
No, so that is a really exciting. And at the time of this recording, and we're going to release it on 4th of July, Caitlin just had her little baby, and she made a beautiful post on Instagram. I think the baby's about a week old. She had a fast and furious laboring like the other Caitlin in the room.
Get out of here.
And this baby is just beautiful. So we're so happy for you, Caitlin, and you deserve being a favorite moment on the podcast. I'm so excited to tell you that the PCOS app is sponsoring this podcast episode. The PCOS app is a one-stop shop for all things PCOS. It's also your meal guide and inspo all in one. If you love listening to me on this podcast and you feel like, hey, I want Caitlin to be in my ear every day encouraging me about how to manage my PCOS, then you have to go download the PCOS app. We have curated articles to answer questions that you have about PCOS. There are short snippets in the PCOS Answers podcast exclusive to the PCOS app. We also have recipes where I not only give you the recipe, but teach you within the recipe itself what I have done to make it more blood sugar and hormone supporting so that you can take your own recipes and make them more PCOS friendly. If you've been looking for the Google of all things PCOS with the filter of compassion and expertise that you get from Caitlin Johnson, RD, then you have found it in the PCOS app. Head to your Android or Apple store today, download it, and let's hang out. I love reviewing Caitlin. I want to talk about some other mama that made some decisions, and this might be a little bit controversial, and I'm not trying to be controversial, but I just think that there was so much kind of interwoven of her story of needing to kind of change her mindset about things, change her beliefs even a little bit, and how her story ended up changing her beliefs. And just the love of her grandma. There's just so much here. So I'm speaking of an episode we had with Ashton Colmoose. She is a physical trainer, personal trainer, I think is her actual credentials. And she treats women that are trying to conceive, are pregnant, and postpartum. Resilient Mama Fitness. She's awesome. And she did an episode with us on exercise and infertility. And she shared a bit about her story, which included needing to walk down an IVF path because her husband had, in my memory of the episode, such minimal sperm.
Yeah, really, really severe sperm problems.
Their only option.
Yeah. So if they were going to have a biological child from the two of them, they were going to need to do something really extreme.
So the episode portion that I'm talking about is here. Let's take a departure from the exercise conversation for a second, Ashton, because our audience may or may not know this, depending on if it's their first episode with us or they've binged through our entire podcast portfolio. But Sophia and I are both Christian. We pray for our clients. We pray for our podcast listeners. We believe God gives life, and we want to honor God with what we do with this podcast. And we have experts and listeners from every shade of everything. Those who don't believe in IVF, those that do, those who go to churches that say you should never do that, those that feel shame because they grew their family in this way. We've had guests we've interviewed and then had to retract episodes because of backlash they got from their church community and professionals because of something we said about IVF on their recording. So, we've just seen a lot in this space, and this is a highly charged topic. And so I'm not asking you to put yourself out there in a way that is going to bring all the internet haters to you. But I think that there's a beautiful conversation we can have, because I hear a little bit of this in your origin story of this was something that we weren't going to consider. And then perhaps we realized this was our only option at a certain point. And there was an evolution in Ashton that was more willing to accept this and pursue this avenue. And I just feel like there's a listener out there right now that your story or your view or your evolution and perspective may help, and to whatever degree that you're willing to share a little bit about your faith and that transformation, I'd love to give you the platform to be able to do that.
Sure. So, I come from a Catholic background, born Catholic, baptized Catholic. My dad's Catholic, grandma's Catholic. Ancestors back Catholic. My mom is not. My mom has never joined the church. It was never something my dad ever pressured her, and it was always her choice. And she goes to church with us, but she just partakes in the readings and not the communion part. And then my husband, when we got married, he is Lutheran, and he is the Missouri Synod, the more Catholic type. You go to his church and you feel like you're at a Catholic church. So when we got married, it was kind of the same thing for me, that if he wanted to join the church, he could. It wasn't like I watched how beautifully my parents demonstrated their faith and how they raised us kids. And so when we started, trying to conceive, I started the natural family planning, not because of that was the way my church was supposed to do it. Like birth control was bad. It was, I felt like crap on birth control. So I chose this path. And the more I learned about Creighton, I used Creighton model charting. The more I learned that why the Catholic Church is the way that it is. And when, they started telling us that IVF, my NAPRO doctor wasn't saying this. It was the urologists that we were seeing for my husband were saying, well, IVF is your only option. I was very, very nope, that can't happen for us. I was just so this is going to happen. Like I put my husband on all the supplements, the right nutrition, make sure he's extra, like this is going to happen for us.
And it worked to an extent, but yeah.
It worked. Yeah, it worked to an extent, but it was, I was just so adamant on that because that was the way that's the way my church says that I was supposed to do. Like the IVF is not supported, that's not natural conception. And the more we got down the journey and IVF was becoming our only option, I was having a very vivid, I remember everything we said. I have a best friend, same thing, born Catholic, very Catholic family. And she is a nurse. And we kind of talk about our faith a lot as far as, just what we believe and what we don't believe. And she said this, and it really stuck with me, that she said, who are we to judge here on earth a woman's desire or a couple's desire to have a child? Like she said, you can't tell me that that is against God's will or God's teaching. And so who are we to judge and say, this is bad or this is bad? And the other thing that for me was, we have cancer and we have these treatments that, because the whole idea is you're influencing life and conceiving life or choosing when life starts and whenever. But I'm like, we have all these drugs that save people's lives, like, cancer, these are terminal illnesses that we've created. Medicine and science has created these things to save these people. And that's okay. Like, I really struggled with that in my own, just learning about like what is for the church and against the church. And then I was having a conversation with my dad about it. And he told me, he said, because I was always afraid of what my grandma was going to say, because she prays every day. She is just so religious and embedded in her faith. And, my dad said, I don't think she's going to care. I said, this is grandma we're talking about. He said, no, I don't think so. And my other set of grandparents are Baptists, and depending on, where you kind of fall in the Baptist realm, there's, whatever. But, so one day in the mail, my grandma sent me an article. I don't even remember what it was. It was maybe Michelle Obama. Did they do IVF? I can't remember. I think it was her article. And she sent it to me and she said, this really made me think of you. And we hadn't done IVF or like started IVF. But to me, that was, I'm going to get emotional. It was
Go for it.
The green light from my grandma saying,
and a permission.
It was almost permission for me. And just being able to accept that, like, this was okay. And when we were choosing like what clinic we were going to, we were we ended up at the University of Iowa for many reasons. Just, statistically how good they are. But one of the things that really stood out to us is how they're very focused on the woman and the family, that you don't get a lot of say in your process. You don't get to choose what gender you transfer. You don't get to choose if you transfer 1 or 2. They're very strict on, you have to wait a whole entire year after a live birth before you can transfer again. They're very focused on building your family one child at a time. And that kind of stood out to me a little bit more, especially coming from
not just a cash cow, not just a baby
not just trying to take your money, that they really care about, you and your success
outcomes.
Rates, and obviously it's going to improve their outcomes as well. But that just kind of, stood out to me. But it was kind of just those 3 things of like, this is, there's no one here on earth to judge us. I mean, God is the ultimate judge. And I guess if I'm going to stand at the gates of heaven and he's going to say, no, you did IVF, you don't get to come in. I mean, I look at my kids, sorry. And I look at
we love this.
I look at my kids and I'm like, you can't judge them. They're beautiful. They're perfect. They're the sweetest.
Worth it.
They're worth it. And
a sacrifice here on
who are you to say how I become a mom? And it's something that my husband and I chose to do together. And we said we were only going to do it once. We weren't going to be one for expense, but it's either going to work and God's going to let it happen, or if it doesn't happen, then we're going to move on. Because that was kind of some pushback we got. Well, why don't you just adopt? Why don't you just go adopt a baby? There's kids out there that need you. We understand that, but that's not guaranteed either. And that's also very expensive. And when you have a calling in your heart for a biological child and something just keeps pushing you to pursue that, you can't ignore
As
that.
does every living organism on the planet.
Yeah. So, so just that was kind of like my evolution, and just, coming here, and we're still in the church. There is still some like hesitancy, like we moved up here to a new church, and, Mason was born and needed to get baptized, and I don't know if the priest is not the first thing I say, like, hey, this is an IVF baby, but I'm very open about it on my business. And I guess I have, as far as like a business partner, I have had somebody that, said because I said I'm doing an IVF transfer, I wasn't allowed to be in that support group anymore. And it was, okay, then you're not for me. Like, you can't judge how a mom chooses to either support her family or even to prevent conception. The mom that's doing birth control, yes, it's a little bit different extremes, but if that's how she's preventing her way of having kids, then, I just chose a different route to conceive my kids. So, I mean, it really came down to who are we to judge here on earth, and just kind of move through it. And I'm so glad I did. It was obviously the best decision I could have done for us, or, we could have done for ourselves. So
what are your boys'
Thank you
names?
for sharing that.
I have Oliver. He'll be 4 in November. And then Gabriel, he would be 2 in February. And then Mr. Mason is 16 months and then 19 weeks pregnant with baby number 4.
Are you going to find out the gender?
We do know the gender.
You do know. Well, that's exciting.
Do know.
So you don't get to choose what you transfer, but do you
Nope.
know it transfer, or do you have to wait till ultrasound?
Nope. So ours were never, we never tested. That was another thing we chose not to do. We did not choose to test our embryos because I just kind of read too many stories of people who transferred good embryos and they didn't take, or they failed. And then people who was on their last embryo and it wasn't graded good, and that was the one that came. So we just didn't want to. And the University of Iowa said, we don't really encourage it. You're both young, you have no genetic issues. Like, we think it's going to be fine. So we never did. So we have no idea when we transfer. But even if you do that, even if you do know the gender, they go by what is graded. I mean, if it's rated the best, but for our sake, ours were just, they just kind of graded them how they looked, before they froze them. So they just do whatever one is next.
And so you're keeping the gender a secret just for you guys?
We need to tell we're going to go ahead and tell family. I think we found out with Mason because with Gabriel, the way he was lying, we didn't know what he was. We weren't going to find out. We didn't find out with Oliver, and we loved that. But when we found out he passed, the ultrasound tech couldn't tell the gender based on how he was lying. So I didn't ever want to be in that situation. Like, birthing a baby that's deceased and not knowing the gender was not.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it wasn't something I like. So I wanted to know with Mason for bonding issues. And then in case anything, we did the blood test in case anything happened. So we did that with this baby, but my husband didn't like that. Well, he liked it, but he didn't like it because he struggled with pronouns. So he'd be like, oh yeah, he's doing great today. Okay, you just told the whole family that we're having a boy. So, so I think this time we're going to go ahead and tell family, just so it's a little bit easier. We won't share names, but we'll just go ahead and tell
less
family.
mental load.
Yeah.
Gosh, I have friends' husbands do that all the time. They're like, oh, and what are your name and your baby? Oh, Jennifer, we were thinking about that too. And then the wife is like, bro, you just basically said we wanted to name our baby Jennifer. Well, I guess it's not a boy. Thanks for just blowing our cover.
Yeah.
We turn this like maybe a little bit light, but I just want to thank you, Ashton, for sharing that story, for being vulnerable. And I think that it will really help people either to feel comfort for choices they've made, or comfort if that's a step that they want to take and it's the right next step for them. Something that I can at least speak for myself. I won't speak for Sophia. I don't know too many things, even if I could judge well. I don't know. And I trust that God can work with each husband and wife to make the right decision for their family at the right time. And what might be right today for this pregnancy that you're pursuing, or 10 years from now, what might be right in one time may be different at another.
Yeah, it's very true. And, it's easy to talk about extremes when it comes to this, like the 47-year-old who's doing her 11th round of IVF because her weird partner demands they have a boy, or these things that like just seem like so obvious moral problems, but not everything falls within that, and so people have to make decisions for themselves.
So the point is, people grow their families in different ways, and Sophia and I are continuing to try and make a space in this podcast where we support people. We give them evidence-based information. We provide nutrition help, and we really honor God in the process and try to bring God into the conversation. And these are hard conversations, and it's not so black and white. We just talked about Caitlin, who might not have been a great candidate for IVF, but that's pretty much what she was being offered next. And then Ashton, who really is kind of who it was originally meant for, a scenario like theirs. And I think that everybody can get the evidence and go to God and make their decisions. That's kind of my point. And it was just a sweet moment in the season.
It was. And one of the things I really love about that is she talked about her relationship with her grandmother, and she talked about her Catholic upbringing and how the church that she grew up in and the church that her grandma was so passionate about really did not, they staunchly believe life begins at conception, and because you are selecting and destroying embryos every time you do IVF, you are killing babies. And that's really what her grandmother believed, and that's what she was raised to believe. And she came to this decision where she was like, I don't know, God, I'm going to have to look you in the face when the roll is called up yonder. And if this is the reason that you say you don't know me and I've departed from you and my life was, wayward or whatever, I will shoulder that. This is worth it to me.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so awesome, because that is never what I hear. It's always, well, I had to do this because I did blah, and I'm a meh, and it's someone else's fault, and I'm a victim to the system, and not like, I chose this. I chose this. I decided this is how I wanted my biological children with my husband. I couldn't do it the way that I would have intended, so I'm going to do it this way, and this is my choice. And the art of choosing, the beauty of choice, there's choice all along the way in every single part of mothering. What kinds of tests are you going to have done? What kinds of scans are you going to go to and not go to? Who are you going to trust advice from or not? So many women, I would say almost everybody, just kind of follows the ass in front of them and says, oh, my doctor wouldn't let me, blah. My doctor said I had to, blah. And, well, I had to have a C-section because this. And not like I chose it because I chose this is where to have. I chose a doctor who has a 70% C-section rate at a hospital with a 50% C-section rate. And so I had a C-section. I chose it. And whether it's an indirect choice, a direct choice, I just thought that was so brave and bold and grown up of her, I guess, and very inspiring to make your best yes. What are you willing to fight for, to stand for, to die for? To what are your highest values? And she really showed her colors there, and I thought that was really beautiful. Whether you believe IVF is good or bad, or depending on the situation or wherever you are, whatever, you got to admire a gal who's making a choice so deliberately, knows that there may be consequences that she's unaware of, and says, I will shoulder them.
Yeah, what a woman of character, frankly.
Character, that's the word.
I think that we're going to kind of wrap this episode up here in a minute, and I just want to say, Sophia and I continue to try and make the most integral decisions about this podcast, who we bring onto the podcast. When we've brought people on and recorded interviews and said, we can't air that. You may not see those behind the scenes things. I call Sophia on things. Sophia calls me on things. Like, we are endeavoring to make right decisions, bring in the right experts, have conversations, educate you. We had a conversation before we hit record today about somebody that was interested in sponsoring the podcast. Again, another sponsor that we were like, Sophia was like, I'm a hard pass. Maybe that'll be good in 2 or 3 years, but they're not there yet.
I think that they need to develop their science a little more before we partner with them. And you know what? Caitlin and I need to develop our science a little bit more. I mean, there was a time in my life when I was a vegan, guys. All right? I would never tell a woman of reproductive age she needs to cut out nutritious foods like meat, dairy, and eggs at this point of my life. But I used to do that. And I use that as an example of we're always growing and learning. And we don't have all the answers. And as time goes on, Caitlin and I see more of things that just shapes our opinions and the way that we want to practice and our experience and expertise. And so we don't have it all sorted out. That's why they call it a practice, right?
We don't. It is. And I just want people to know, like, we make deliberate decisions. We really hash things out. We pray. And then we trust each other. I could have pushed back on Sophia today and been like, well, I've looked at 20 charts on this thing and I think it's kind of okay and I've been using it this way. But she said, I'm not comfortable with it. And I said, great. We won't email them back right now. So, I want people to know that we really are trying to do this with the right heart, the right science, the best that we can right now. Will things improve and get better? Will we do another 138 episodes? We will, unless we feel like there's a better thing to do,
Yeah, unless another way of communicating with you comes out. Brainwave reader.
All right. So 138 episodes. Sophia, happy third anniversary.
Happy third anniversary to you. I couldn't imagine doing this with anyone else. Does anyone else think that little plant behind Caitlin looks like a tiny little afro? That's all I can think about this episode. And
it's an afro.
It's her little afro plant. And listen, we hope you stick with us for the rest of the season. We hope you stick with us and find us on YouTube and tell us whether or not you think that plant looks like an afro. We hope that you are learning a lot from us, that we're helping you reach your family goals. And we will see you again next season.
Listening.
Keep listening.
Yeah, next week, really. Interlude. Let the summer interlude commence.
Summer, and happy 4th of July. Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to foodfreedomfertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's foodfreedomfertility.com. Thanks for listening.